Doctor Who is back. Obviously, it never really went anywhere, and currently it doesn't really feel like it's here, but it will be back, and it promises to be bigger than ever. For years, Mr. T Davies has spoken about Doctor Who's place in the wider franchise stage, lamenting its failure to establish itself as a proper shared universe to rival your Star Warses and your Marvels. A few years ago, he said this: "We should be sitting here announcing the Nyssa Adventures, or the return of Donna Noble, and you should have the 10th and 11th Doctor together in a 10-part series. Genuinely." I'd like to thank Russell for providing the audio for that clip. He said all this, I will add, from the safety of Doctor Who retirement. Backseat showrunning while someone else held the reins. I don't think he ever expected to come back. If he had, he probably wouldn't have said it at all. He definitely wouldn't have gone into such a specific idea of what they should be doing. Poor Sarah Sutton has probably been waiting by the phone ever since RTD came back, because now he kinda has to put his money where his mouth is. Obviously, no one is expecting him to deliver on all the hypothetical ideas he suggested in that interview, although he has actually provided us with the return of Donna Noble. But there is an expectation for him to take the series to a new level. And I don't think it's an unfair one. He's basically promising it, and he has already made some of the first steps to making it happen. He's secured international streaming distribution, he's given us a new MCU-esque logo and name for the Doctor Who universe.
Say that again?
But we're getting to the point where it's time to start seeing something concrete on the universe front, meaning spin-offs, and I have some thoughts on how to go about doing that, because I think Doctor Who is a tricky show to spin off from, and I'd like to dive into why. Before we gaze into the future of spin-offs, let's look back at what we've had so far. I'm aware that there's a vast, rich universe that exists outside of the Doctor Who live-action television series, but for the sake of this video, I'm going to focus on live-action TV because I think it's directly relevant to the potential direction of this new era. The first Doctor Who spin-off to happen, or to kind of happen, was K9 and Company, and as far as ideas for spin-offs go, this wasn't a terrible one. It pairs two iconic parts of the Tom Baker era. Sarah Jane is a good lead, and K9 is fantastic iconography. It's no surprise that, although this didn't last beyond the pilot, that both of these characters ended up getting their own spin-offs further down the line. It's hard to get a great sense of what the show actually would have been because the first episode is more of a setup for the setup than it is an example of it. We see K9 and Sarah take on a human sacrificey witchy cult conspiracy that has everyone in the town in on it, even the police. It ends with K9 and Sarah shooting and beating up everyone involved, so it doesn't leave much potential in the setting or supporting cast, but presumably we would have seen K9 and Sarah take on other alien and supernatural threats, but those adventures never materialised. So the first spin-off to really get off the ground was Torchwood, which is actually an anagram of Doctor Who. It's a show that sees Captain Jack teaming up with the Welsh to protect the world from alien and supernatural threats. So while Doctor Who is out travelling time and space, these characters stay in one place, defending the Earth. Quite soon after that, we saw the start of the Sarah Jane Adventures, which is actually an anagram of Doctor Who. It's a show that sees Sarah Jane teaming up with children to protect the world from alien and supernatural threats. So while Doctor Who is out travelling time and space, these characters stay in one place, defending the Earth. Wow, that sounds kind of familiar. Obviously, I'm being a little reductive there. You absolutely get a different experience watching these two shows. Torchwood starts with an embarrassingly edgy attitude of, we're a grown-up show, we have swears and sex, but it develops into something that actually is a good example of mature storytelling in the Doctor Who universe. Sarah Jane is a fantastic kids show that treats its audience like they're intelligent enough to understand complicated and emotional concepts and subject matter. The hearts of the show are pretty incomparable, it's just that the premises are pretty similar. It's also the premise of the other K9 spin-off and Class. It's just that one is Australian and the other is even more of an overt Buffy knockoff than the others. I have a friend who calls this genre Alien Cops because the characters are all planted in one place and they have no real choice but to take on a "we're defending the Earth from external threats" role. Occasionally you'll get a good alien that the characters have to help, but 9 times out of 10 the alien is the situation that our characters must deal with because we live on Earth, we are humans, and we kind of want humanity to be alright by the end. You also can't go too far into any lasting change for these characters when they're Earth-based. The integration of aliens into human society seems like a great idea for a few episodes, but the further down that path you go, the less relatably, recognisably Earth it feels. You know, the next alien invasion doesn't feel like, oh god, that could happen to me, because this Earth no longer feels like the Earth that I live on. So unlike Doctor Who, which mostly has the freedom to construct an entirely new scenario every week, these spin-offs require a little more preservation of the status quo, which I think can lead to a bit of a limited scope. That's without even mentioning how inadvertently conservative a lot of them can end up. And the problem is, this is something that applies to every spin-off we've had so far. Unless you include Tales of the TARDIS, which RTD did try and promote as the first spin-off of the new era, but let's be reasonable here. I think they were a cute, lovely way to celebrate the show's history for the anniversary, but they're one step away from those adverts to sell the DVDs, and it had no distribution outside of BBC iPlayer. I think calling it a spin-off is generous. So we're all caught up, and we have the context we need to start thinking about the future. I sense a collective impatience on that front among fans, like we're all ready for Russell to give us more information about where we're going. I think realistically, they do probably want the first season of actual Doctor Who to have happened before they start telling us to look beyond. I think the fact RTD2 has already had a Doctor's full run is tricking me into thinking that we're further into this era than we actually are. But I do want to hear from Russell about what he's planning for this Whoniverse at some point. Because spin-offs are a good idea, not because they should be chasing the success of Marvel and Star Wars, especially now that that success is kind of questionable, but for other reasons. Now that the main show is only going to be on TV for 8 weeks of the year, spin-offs are a great way of keeping the Whoniverse alive, both on our minds and in our discussions. They're also potentially a great way to get some distinct voices telling stories in this world, since Russell is likely to be writing the majority of actual Doctor Who episodes. As an extension of that, it'll hopefully give someone the opportunity to act as showrunner for a Doctor Who series, meaning that, ideally, when Russell retires in 2056, someone will have the experience needed to take the reins from him. But that all sounds very cold and practical. I'm talking like a producer. There's also just the fact that spin-offs are a cool and interesting opportunity to see more from this world that we love. We as fans want to see them. So, what can they do? The universe of Doctor Who is infinite, spanning the entirety of time and space, and I'd imagine that's more of a curse than a blessing, because there's pretty much a new supporting cast and setting every week. Most of the ideas in the series are not built for longevity. Somewhere could be the perfect setting for Series 10, Episode 11, but do you really want to plant your feet there and stay with those people and their story for an extended period of time? The obvious thing to do, and the foundation of 90% of fan-suggested spin-offs, is to build a show around a character, ideally someone who appeals to fans of the show as it is now and not just of a previous era. The fact this era has only just started means it would have to be someone who'd been introduced or reintroduced as part of this new era, which is, I guess, harder now that there's so few episodes. So let's say you've chosen someone to bring back. Rose, Ace, Susan, Clyde, Missy, River, the Paternoster Gang, the Eighth Doctor, the Fugitive Doctor. You then have the arguably more important question of what next, and that's a step that I think a lot of people refuse to consider when they demand the return of their faves, because it feels like the options are pretty limited. What a lot of people seem to want from these characters is the Sarah Jane or Captain Jack treatment. You know, have them stay on Earth, give them a little ensemble, and have them fight extraterrestrial crime. You know, sending those damn illegal spacemen back to where they belong. Alien cops. Not only does this have all the problems we've already established, it's also something we've seen before. It's exclusively the thing we've seen before. The most obvious alternative, then, is to give them the ability to travel, whether that's time travel or space travel. Suddenly it gets rid of a lot of the issues. You know, they can move from place to place, helping people, leading to some actual lasting change, and then whizzing off for the next adventure. The issue with that is that that's a show that already exists, and it's called Doctor Who. It seems like the spin-off some people envisage for their favourite characters can just be boiled down to Doctor Who but with someone else, or in some cases, Doctor Who with the same someone. It's an abysmal state of affairs if our only two options are Alien Cops and Doctor Who again. Maybe that's thinking about things in an old-fashioned way. Maybe shows don't need to run for 4 series on network TV. As much as I hate the phrase, maybe they can do a 6-part streaming event, throw Missy into some wacky scenario that she has to get out of, and see that unfold. It doesn't have to be a sustainable premise for a full series. But as much as I see that potentially leading to some good results in the Whoniverse, I feel like recent Marvel and Star Wars shows that people were saying, well, this is basically a 6-hour movie, have kind of just left people craving actual real television. If you look at the shows that are actually being watched the most on streaming, they're shows from 10, 15 years ago that ran for multiple seasons. People want to see a show evolve. They want to spend a prolonged time with these characters and their relationships. I think we're all very sick of things that just feel like movies with bad pacing. So with the Doctor Who shows that we're inevitably going to be getting, I'd rather they feel like shows, despite their place on Disney+. It's just a shame that as far as long-term series go, the two most obvious and requested types of spin-off are things I don't really want to see. Maybe we could have one more show, like the Sarah Jane Adventures, but I don't want to see 5 of them. To me, the more interesting thing to do would be to reject all the fan-favourite ideas and just do something really weird. Something that makes people go, no one asked for this. That's an area where expanded non-TV media tends to shine. Something that actually has an idea behind it, driven by a premise, a story idea, beyond just, oh, I guess we could do a spin-off about them. And that doesn't necessarily mean totally abandoning every familiar character and element. I hate bringing up Andor because I don't want it to feel like my only example of a franchise doing something right, but it's one of my favourite shows ever, and that's not because I went into it as the world's biggest fan of Cassian from Rogue One. It's because it's a show that takes a world we think we know and understand and shines a light on areas of the story that we'd never seen before. It doesn't feel like a case of, we want to make a show about this character but we're not quite sure what to have him do, which some shows do feel like. It feels more, we have an idea for a project, an idea, a story, a feel, who can we have in it? And I think that's a great starting point. I'd love to see Bad Wolf play around more with genre, beyond just Doctor Who for kids, Doctor Who for adults, or Doctor Who for teens. I want it to feel like they're making real creative decisions, and not just building a universe for the sake of it. The unofficial rumblings we've been hearing about what's on the horizon make me feel more hopeful than I would have expected to feel, but we'll have to see. Because to me, this is how to truly expand the Whoniverse, to make it feel as though there are stories going on outside of what we're used to seeing. I'm not going to sit here and make spin-off suggestions of my own, because I'm sure they'll be just as fan-brained and biased and flawed as everyone else's. It's much easier to stand up above it all and say, well, look at all of you guys being silly. But I hope I have made it clear why I think they need to be careful when pushing forward into this new era. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Are my concerns unfounded? Do you think I'm completely right? Do you think maybe there's some truth to what I'm saying, but you don't care because you'd be there on day one for Dr. Song or the Rani Adventures? Let me know in the comments. I would really love to hear your thoughts on this topic. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please remember to subscribe. I talk about Doctor Who on this channel quite often, and when the show is actually coming out in May and June, I will be doing weekly videos about each episode, so subscribe to see those. I also talk about a whole load of other topics that we can enjoy in the meantime, so yeah, stick around for those. Thank you very much. Leave a like on this video because it's fun to press buttons. I will see you all very, very soon. Love you lots.